I really wasn't looking for a job with Air America, but I was just looking for something different to do that would be interesting and a little bit more adventurous than what I was doing, working in the financial district in New York. And so I've been scanning the New York Times Help Wanted and came across a want ad looking for people with recent airdrop experience. My airdrop experience wasn't what you'd call recent, but I was in the 82nd Airborne, 3 years in the paratroopers, and I had been to airdrop school, heavy aero delivery, and so I went to the employment agency and tried to apply. They wouldn't accept me because my experience wasn't recent enough. And they made the mistake of saying, and don't worry, don't look around New York for the people that are looking to hire people with airdrop experience, because they're not based here, they're based in Washington, D.C. So I left, went down to the public library in New York City on 42nd and 5th, and got the yellow pages and copied down all the airlines that I thought might be on non-scheduled or overseas. And when I left the library, I went across the street and picked up the New York World Telegraph and Sun, and there on the front page was a article about a C-123 that had crashed in the Plain of Jars. And I looked at that and I said to myself, because it did say Southeast Asia on the in the advertisement, I said, I'll bet that's the company. And they mentioned that it was Air America, which happened to be on my list also. So the next day I called down and told him that I'd gone to see this fellow. He said my airdrop experience wasn't recent enough. And I said, well, there's a few other things that you should probably take into consideration, and that is, I do have a college degree. I did go to aero delivery heavy drop school when I was in the paratroopers. I'm also an intermediate speed radio operator when I had received training for that in the Army. And I'm a skydiver, so I'm used to parachutes and that type of thing. And they said, well, we got a man coming up to New York here in a couple of days, and he'll give you a call when he gets in town. And he did, and he invited me out for lunch, and we sat down and chatted over lunch, and he said, are you still interested in the job? I said, yes. He says, okay, if you want it, you can have it. But he said, you still have to pay the employment agency their commission because it's part of their contract, and you did talk to them first. So that was it. That was in December, and 1st of January or 2nd January, I was on my way to
what year was
Southeast
that,
Asia.
remember?
Huh?
What year was that? Remember? 1960?
64, 63.
Okay.
That was 62 December 62, and then I went to 63, January 63, I flew to Southeast Asia.
So you left New York, and then where'd you go? They sent you someplace? They paid
No,
you?
they sent, well, just Northwest Airlines to Tokyo through Anchorage, and then on the, what they call the Golden Worm, the CAT Convair 880 that flew between Hong Kong and Taipei, and also I think flew into the Philippines. And then from there, they briefed me, got the data, signed all the papers, because we...
Now, where'd this take place at?
Taipei.
Taipei, okay.
And a lot of people don't realize it, but Air America was a airline, but it didn't own, I don't think, over half a dozen airplanes. It had a couple of Twin Otters and a couple of C-46s and one or two other things scattered around. Our actual contract was signed with an outfit called Air Asia, which is based in Taipei and was part of the Civil Air Transport Complex. And the reason that Air America came into existence was that in order to bid on a USAID contract,
USAID stands for,
United States Agency for International Development.
okay,
In order to bid on a United States Agency for International Development contract, it had to be an American company. And so Air America was formed, and they wanted these USAID contracts because that was the aegis or the cover that they were operating under in Southeast Asia. At that time, mostly in Laos and a bit in Thailand and a little bit in Vietnam, a little bit in various other places. So our paychecks were Air America paychecks, but the airplanes and the personnel were Air Asia. There were a few exceptions. We had some 123s that were on bail from the Air Force, and I can't think, Caribous. We had, well, no, those were civilian Caribous, Bravo 851 and 852. That they were the only two civilian Caribous in existence at that time. All the rest of them had gone to the Army, and so basically that was the
okay.
story.
Now, how did you get assigned to Laos?
That's just where I was assigned. That's where the major aero delivery was being done, because they were feeding the Hmongs in the mountains of Laos. And the Hmongs were a slash and burn culture. And they'd move into an area and they'd cut all the trees down, and then they'd burn everything, and then they would cultivate rice on the hillside. And when they had exhausted the soil at that time, they moved on and did the same thing someplace else. And because they were fighting now, they weren't able, they were and operating on a basis.
Fighting who?
Fighting the Pathet Lao and also the North Vietnamese, but mostly the Pathet Lao.
And they were doing this for us?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. And so they had to be fed somehow. So that's where we fed them with rice and with kwai, which is a name for the water buffalo over there, and nam pa, which is a fish oil, which is really the only thing with proteins in it that they get and they really thirst for. But so we'd be providing food to the Hmongs.
Okay, and that's because the Hmongs were, the CIA engaged the Hmongs, recruited the Hmongs.
They had recruited them, trained them. Vong Pao was their leader, and the Hmongs were, how do you put it? They didn't really get it. They were Highlanders, so to speak. The Hmongs, according to their tradition, they owned all the land that was above 3,000 feet elevation. And the Lao people, they were the people that were below 3,000 feet. The Hmongs are Chinese by descent. Mm-hmm. But they had, since they were now fighting, and they weren't able to feed themselves as they traditionally had, they had to be supplied with rice and any other foods.
Where did you fly out of in Laos?
Usually Vientiane.
Oh, then, okay, that was the main operation?
Yeah. Sometimes we would go to other places. Sometimes if the food happened to be there, they might, instead of driving the food, say up to Vientiane, they would drive it to Savannakhet or Pak Se or Luang Prabang or one of those other places and other towns, and then we'd fly up there and pick it up and drop it. But most of it was out of Laos. It was on pallets. The stuff that we had to drop out of Savannakhet and these other places, they didn't have pallets. And so we had to manhandle it to the back of the airplane and stack it and throw it out. Now,
at that point, this became a CIA operation in Air America. They bought Air America then?
No. I'm not 100% sure about that. What Air America was a proprietary, and was part of what was called the Pacific Corporation.
CIA purchased Air America.
I think
whole
CIA
operation.
set it up.
Yeah, and then later they bought it out as a
No.
proprietary airlines.
No, I don't believe so. My understanding is, and I could be wrong, but my understanding is that they were the ones that set it up originally so that they could bid on the USAID contracts in Laos and in Southeast Asia, and then have a cover for their drops of military material. They were done on this. They were done on the same. They were done on the with the same airplanes, not always out of the same bases.
Now that's what they call hard rice,
Yeah.
soft rice.
Hard rice is guns, ammunition, and that type of thing.
Soft rice is what you eat.
Yeah,
Now, the planes you were on, then you were dropping both materials?
on different trips, yes. But in the early days, we didn't. The hard rice came from out of Laos. The and a lot of secrecy covered it as to where you launched, how you got in and out of Laos, decoys, tail planes, changing of tail numbers and on airplanes and various things like that, call signs, so that it would sound as if the plane had come out of Vientiane where actually it had come out of somewhere else.
Now, did the CIA personnel ever sit down and talk to you guys as crews, or they kept away from the operation and kept invisible?
No, they didn't sit down and talk with us as crews. They were present in various forms. They even had a kicker or two that was CIA.
A kicker is, explain a kicker, what is that?
Well, formal name is air freight specialist. Kicker, he's the guy that loads the airplane, ties the load down, and then either airdrops it or offloads it at the destination.
Load master kind of thing?
Yeah, right.
Okay.
Right.
And-
Only a little more. The relationship between the kickers and the pilots was a lot closer than we say between a loadmaster Air Force, who was a lowly peon, and God in the cockpit. They listened to you, they consulted with you, you could ask them something, and it was a very good working relationship.
Now, you were a kicker to start with,
Yep.
and then you came back to the States to get your license, and then went back again, is that right?
Well, yeah, I was over there for over 3.5 years.
As a kicker?
Yes, and I had been interested in aviation before. I took my first flying lessons in 1952, but I wasn't able to complete them. It was the old story that when I had the time, I didn't have the money, and when I had the money, I didn't have the time. It's flying, trying to become a pilot on your own, pay for it yourself, rather than get it from the military is a tough road to hoe. Yeah. And as I became involved with aviation and more, and enjoyed the company of the pilots, I said to myself, this is what I want to do for a living. So I saved up my money, and after 3.5 years came back to the States, took my flying lessons, got my ratings, did a bunch of flight instructing to build time, and in aviation, it's a tough racket because you can't get a job without experience, and you can't get experience without a job. And so you just go from one to the other, any place you think you can build time, and it gets and you have to take about any job that's offered, because you know if you don't take it, there's a guy standing right behind you in line that will, because it's hard to build flight time. But I finally got my time up, got my airline transport pilot's license, and then made contact with, well, actually, going back, it's kind of an interesting story. I subscribed to U.S. News, not U.S. News, World Report, Aviation Week and Space Technology. And they used to have inside the back cover of the magazine a profile of somebody in aviation. And I opened it up one day, and lo and behold, there was a pilot who was the aviation manager for Continental Air Services in Saigon, with whom I had flown with a kicker, as a kicker, when we were both with Air America. He had been with Air America, but he moved over to Continental Air Services in 1965, I think it was. So I wrote him. He said, "Good to hear from you. Nothing open right now. If something comes, I'll give you a holler." And he made it sound like it would be months down the road. And I don't think it was a month and a half later. I was on my way out to Los Angeles to interview for a continental job in Southeast Asia.
And then you got the job, and then you left. Where'd you go in Southeast Asia?
I was hired to fly in Saigon, and I was a co-pilot on DC-3s and SC-7 Skyvans, and a captain on BE-55 Beechcraft Baron. Then we were there. I was there for 2 years, and at that Continental Air Services in Vietnam, as opposed to Air America, we were the only commercial operator in Vietnam that people could charter and fly. We worked for ICC in country construction, which was Seabees were the ones that were supervising that, but they were building roads and airports and housing and things in Vietnam. We flew a lot of reporters around. If somebody wanted to charter a flight, it had to be done with Continental Air Services. And,
was that owned by CIA too?
No.
Yeah.
That was...
Now, how long did you go back to Laos and fly in Laos, or did you stay in Saigon?
No. In 72, the operation in Saigon was reduced. The Air America by that time, Air America came in there big time finally. They weren't there. They were there just in a very small capacity. I worked Vietnam as a kicker on a DC-3, and but it was just point-to-point stuff. I don't think we made one airdrop, and carrying various goods and chattels and people around the country. And Air America, I think, had 2 or 3 airplanes there at that time. There was not much going on. That was in 63, 64, before the big push. And then Air America, when I came back, Air America was in there big time. And whatever the politics of it was, or the reason, the operation in Saigon was reduced considerably, and they only left 2 or 3 people and 2 or 3 airplanes there. And the rest of us went up to Laos, where things were still, they still needed, Continental had a pretty big operation up there. Continental flew cheek by jowl with Air America. They're kind of brand X, nobody's heard of them out there. But they flew very similar missions, dealt with the customer. Air America were the heavy lifters.
Who's the customer?
That's CIA.
Okay. Why'd they call them the customer?
That's what they're called.
Okay. Good answer.
It was just a term that that sounded better, I think, than saying, I was talking to the CIA agent today. Yeah. Because it was all supposed to be secret. When I first went over there, it was really hush hush. We would go to places and they wouldn't tell us where we were going. When they got there, they wouldn't tell us where we were. and under threat of death, just about, we were never to tell anybody where we had been. As far as everybody was concerned, we just kind of disappeared off the face of the map. But the Continental is a descendant of Bird & Sons. Bird & Sons is a construction company. I believe they're up in the northwest part of the state somewhere. And they were over there building runways and roads, and they had a couple of C-46s and a couple of C-46s, and I think a couple of DO-28 Dorniers, and a Scottish Pioneer or two. But the man that ran it, when Bird and Sons quit, were done with their construction work, here they had these C-46s and a few other odds and ends of airplanes that with nothing to do. And the man that was their aviation manager, he said, "Shoot, I can fly charters back and forth between Vientiane and Bangkok. I can drop rice out of my C-46s. I can carry customers or personnel around the country in my Dorniers." And as an American company, they were allowed to bid on this USAID contract. So they bid against Air America on some of these specific contracts, and they underbid them, and they got the contracts. And then it just grew from there until they had a pretty good size operation. And that happened in '60, and then Continental bought it. Bird and Sons operated until somewhere in '65, I believe it was, and then Continental bought them out, and it became Continental Air Services. And that's the genealogy of it.
Well, you need a scoreboard to keep track of this.
Yeah.
Now, when you're flying over Laos, and I assume some places you got shot at from the ground, and what would happen if you went down in the jungle and you're 50, 60 miles from wherever? How do you expect to get out?
That was Air America. You have no idea the performance. Nobody has any idea of the performance of those Air America helicopter pilots. First place, when you're on the flying, you're on the radio guarding various frequencies. If you got hit and started to go down, you let somebody know right away. You told them what your location was and what you were going to try and do. Put it in a rice paddy, drop it in the trees or whatever, like Platus Porter, which I did most of my flying in. You could slow that plane down to 15 knots and still be flying. And then if you hit something, at least it wouldn't be too bad. Or aim the nose between a couple of trees or something and shear the wings off and slow you down at the same time. But those, they were the ones, and they didn't very often fail. I can remember some of the search and rescues and the picking up of personnel. It was those guys had more guts than you'd ever hope to believe. And they weren't kids either, most of them. They were World War II retreads, and some of them were fairly young. But many times I forget how many. It's public record. You could Air America Association could tell you, but I believe it was somewhere around 150 U.S. servicemen were picked up by them. And of course our own people when we went down. We didn't often have airplanes that went down with survivors. Emmett Kay was captured because he landed at a airstrip where he didn't really know where he was, and when he got on the ground there were a bunch of PLs there. Ernie Bray, let's see, how did he? I can't remember exactly what the story was, but he ended up being captured.
So that was the only way to get out then, because it was too far to walk.
Oh yeah,
They just have to hope.
And but if they latched onto you first, the PLs, if they latched onto you first, there wasn't any chance of getting out.
Yeah.
Path at Lau.
Yeah.
But if you could get out a radio call. And then when that would happen, then we'd get some support from the Air Force or the Navy or the Marines. They'd send Sky Raiders over or something, and there was one search and rescue. We had 105s and everything going around trying to get them out. But most of our deaths were from crashes that weren't survivable. That the pilots just got in a situation that they couldn't get out of.
Let me jump over to Lima Site 85, that radar site. Was that gone by the time you were there? Or?
It was there the first time.
Okay.
We went in there quite often on airdrops, and very impressive sight. It was quite a feat that the Vietnamese did in taking that, because you would think it was basically impregnable, but they managed to scale the.
Did you want to explain what Lima Site 85 is?
What it is?
Yeah.
It was one of the outposts, where the basically Air Force, I think. They also had, I'm not sure what the mix was. There were people there that had been, were ex-Air Force. When I say ex-Air Force, they were...
Sheep dipped or something?
Yeah, they had supposedly left the Air Force and were no longer associated with it. I guess they wanted deniability. And there were also, I believe, a few civilians up there, and they were operating a radar site that allowed greatly enhanced the accuracy of the bombing of North Vietnam. And a real thorn in the side of the North Vietnamese. They survived quite a while, because there was 85, then a little few miles over was 86, and then a few miles past that were 87. But they were working their way in towards that site before I left in ⁸ and getting closer and closer. I remember when 87 that went down.
Now, when you say the Pathet Lao was making a road to that
Vietnamese
location?
I never. They did. They were working on a road, but I didn't. I wasn't doing anything connected with that. I never even saw it. And by the time I left, that road wasn't out there yet, and it was coming. They knew where it was and what it was doing, but I don't have any knowledge.
I guess they were trying to put the road in to get artillery close enough to hit the site.
But yeah, they had to move. They had to get moved in where they could get enough people in there. But I don't know. I don't even know about. I've read about the attack, but I'm not sure how much of it was artillery or mortars or what.
There's a whole website on that. Just
Yeah.
that alone. Okay, now, when did you leave, or how did you decide you had enough and you were going to come back?
The second time?
Yeah, when you were a pilot.
That was decided for me. That was in December of '73. I'd been there over 3.5 years.
As a pilot.
Yes. And in July of June 30th of '73, there was a big cutback, because the hostiles had advanced. The area that we were covering wasn't as large as it was. The things were winding down in Vietnam. There was a bunch of things going on that there just wasn't the demand for air transportation. And on June 30th of '73, we had a 50% cutback in people. And I managed to survive that one, and then on the 31st of December of '73, there was another 50% cutback, which I didn't survive. And in a sense, I was ready to come back, because I remember on the 31st of December, I was flying back down from upcountry to Vientiane. It was a beautiful day. The sun was setting in the west. And I'm sitting in the airplane, and the realization flooded over me that, gee, you know, I'm not going to have to go up there again. It was a tremendous sense of relief. People that haven't gone through it don't realize, and you don't realize it when you're doing it, the strain that you're under. You have our regular work schedule was 5 days on, a day off, a day on standby, and then another 5 days on. And we were in this porter program that I was in. We were making 30, 40 landings a day in a 7 to 9, 10 hour period. into the strips that you wouldn't believe. I mean, if I told people the kind of strips we went into, the length of them and that type of thing, they just call me a liar. So I don't even talk to people about it unless have been there and done it themselves, and then because they know what it's all about. And when you come back, you had 5 days off, no, excuse me, 5 days working, then you had a day off and a day on standby. That next day that you went back up country, boy, your butt was bouncing on the ground by the time you got home, because that first day was just, you were getting back into the swing of things. And then you were back and functioning fine, but that first day was murder.
That's a lot of flying.
Yeah, and when you would think, well, okay, you had 2 days off, but you still had to get back into the mindset of the type of work and what you were going to have to face up there.
Was there a landing strip called Long Ting or something like that?
Long Chen?
Long Chen, yeah.
Yeah.
And that was in Laos?
Yeah.
You ever go in there?
Oh, many times, yeah.
Okay, now it's private strip of the Path of Laos.
Now it's more or less of a I think it's a museum more than anything else. Long Chen was the main base for operations in upcountry Laos. That's where the customer was set up, and
that's the CIA.
Yeah.
Now, did you ever go into Udorn, Thailand?
Yeah.
That was a CIA operation, was it not?
Yeah.
As a base?
Well, it was a Thai Air Force base and a U.S. Air Force base also.
Okay.
But and it was the base for Air America helicopters. Air America helicopters pretty well strayed south of the river. They were almost like two separate operations. Udorn was where the helicopters were, and a little bit of rivalry between fixed wing and rotor wing. They had a company school there. They had a beautiful club and a pool and all the rest of it. Really not bad living at all. Whereas in Vientiane, you lived in what you could find. There were nice houses in Vientiane, but Udorn was basically for the helicopter operation. Very little fixed wing out of there.
Did you ever come across?
We would fly out of there, but I mean very little fixed wing base there. I'm sorry.
Right. Now, did you ever know Ted Shackley, who
Never
was
met
the
him, no.
case officer in Vientiane?
No.
Okay, he probably came after you then.
Oh, wait a minute.
Ted Shackley was the case officer for CIA in Vientiane.
He was there. I thought he was there before 60.
Yes, he was there when the Lima Site 85 got overrun. So that'd be before your time then.
That'd be after. Well, before I was flying there, but it was.
You came
Lima Site 85 was overrun after I left, or while I was working out of Vientiane. I was based in Vientiane for basically 3 years. I spent a half year in Vietnam. So I was in Laos for over 3 years.
If you look back, hindsight, would you do it again?
Oh yeah, wouldn't trade my experiences there for the world. No. It was exciting at times, but the big thing was the camaraderie, the comradeship with the other pilots. It was a great bunch of people with whom to work. Now, there were some duds, and there were some guys that you wouldn't invite home because you wouldn't want to let them in your house. But they were all out there. They were all doing their job, and taking risks every day. And there was also a feeling that we were doing something constructive. It was good. For the foreign policy of the country, we were doing a job that nobody else really wanted to do. We were doing a job actually that the military couldn't do. And this is not to knock the military, but there's a big difference between a civilian operation and a military operation. A military operation is generally geared to the lowest common denominator or close to it. That is, a military mission is normally planned so that the least competent has some sort of chance of surviving it. Or you just go ahead regardless and do it. with civilian, if you don't hack it, you're out. You're gone. They're not going to put up with you. And we were willing to work harder, faster than a civilian operation like that. We were being paid by the hours that we flew. So the more hours that we get in, the better, and we get in and we get that airplane loaded as fast as possible and get out of there and get back when we were done as fast as possible. It was, and there was a flexibility in our operations that the military doesn't have. It's necessary in the military. And like I say, I'm not knocking it, but they have a big organization, a lot of people, and they have to take it serious. They have to get everything organized. I can remember we were. If I ramble, tell me to stop. There was a Air Force fighter jock had a North Vietnamese MiG cornered, and he radioing back to get permission to shoot the airplane down. And a Navy fighter jock off of one of the carriers out there heard this conversation. So he headed over, zipped in, zapped the MiG, went back out, and you can hear this Air Force guy say, "Hey, he shot my MiG." I mean, why do you need permission to do something like that? Then I was down at Savannah Kit one time. We were having a cocktail party basically in the evening, and the CIA, the customer, we had one helicopter base. Air America had one helicopter based at Savannah Kit. And I don't know how old this pilot was, but he was awfully thin on top and a bit of a gut, probably in his 50s somewhere. And his co-pilot and a flight mechanic were there. And what had happened is there was a fellow out in an L-19 or 01 or whatever they call them now. 01 I guess they were, weren't they, single engine?
I don't know.
And he had gotten into a terrible thunderstorm, airplane gone inverted, lost control, bailed out, and he's sitting in the middle of the jungle, wants somebody to come and pick him up. And it was a hell of a storm that was taking place out there. And at that time, the U.S. Army had a big base at a place called Nakhon Phanom in the northeast corner of Thailand. And that's where they based some Jolly Green Giants. And the Jolly Greens headed out to pick up this guy and got some rain on their windscreen and turned around and went back to Nakhon Phanom. So the customer comes over to this this Air America helicopter pilot, explains the situation for him, where the man was located. He wasn't that far away. Couldn't be 15, 20 miles away from us. And he said, sure. So we fired up the H-34, that had a 1340s in it, the old radial engine, just chug, chug, chug. You climbed at 65 knots, you went level at 65 knots, you went down to 65 knots, slow moving machines. 30 minutes later, that pilot was back at the cocktail party with us. They'd gone out, and it's pitch dark, absolute pitch dark. Went out there, picked him up out of the jungle, brought him home, brought him back to Savannah Kit.
That's just hard to understand how it's possible.
And normally some of those Jolly Greens, they did fantastic rescue work, but it was just a military operation. They were trying to get a Jolly Green to go in and pick up some pilot in Vietnam or North Vietnam. So in order to do it, they had to have high cover, they had to have ground air support, low down, they had to have backup helicopters, and they're trying to get all these things organized. And by the time they finally got everybody stacked up, ready to go in and get this guy, man, it's on high cover. The jet says, "I'm sorry, I'm low on fuel. I got to go get fuel." So they had to delay the whole operation. Well, this guy goes and gets fuel, and he comes back, gets tanked up, And this type of thing going on where they're trying to go in and rescue someone and it takes them so darn long to organize it that they're running out of fuel. Well, that didn't happen with Air America.
Now, has the CIA agency ever kept in contact with you over the years after you got out, just to say hi and thanks and whatever?
Well, we got that nice citation in '01,
Yeah.
which recognized the work. But no personal contact. Closest personal contact was when in Honduras, was it? Yes, where that 123 was shot down and the crew was killed and the kicker got out the back. They started looking around to see where everybody was that used to work in Southeast Asia. And I was director of ops up here at Bemidji, for Bemidji Aviation Services. And a fellow from the FAA in Minneapolis called and said, I just wanted to let you know that you're not planning on going anywhere, are you? You're still working for so-and-so. And said, yes, okay, well, they're looking in to see where all these people are that used to work down in Southeast Asia and around for them, because they were trying to, I guess, find out what they were doing or trying to stop them from continuing doing it or whatever.
Kind of the guys maybe going rogue on their own.
But never any direct contact from the company, and I don't think many other people ever did either.
No, just a few in Bemidji.
Well, there were some that kept on in various capacities. Southern Air Transport, when it was still a proprietary, they had a lot of the ex-guys from over there. And but these people over there, they weren't dashing young men in their flying machines. Some of these guys, they were well past their prime. I have a picture in my office. I'll show it to you in there of a A model 130, and we needed more heavy lift, so they checked us out in the 130s, or they bailed a 130 to us, and with the A models, and then later on they brought in some E models.
You know, Hollywood always tries to portray Air America crews as carrying contraband in and out of Vietnam. I mean, that makes for a good movie. Like when they made the movie Air America.
Well, I never saw or heard of any incident of any Air America personnel involved in drugs, moving of drugs. Nothing. Not that it couldn't have happened. But now contraband, I've heard a little bit of that. A lot of gold that you could buy very cheaply in Vientiane at that time, $35, $37 an ounce. And people did get, one or two did get caught. Oh, yeah, I remember there was one incident that a fellow did get caught with
Gold?
No, nothing. I think it was marijuana. I don't know what in the heck he was even thinking, but he came into the Philippines and they caught him. He had big suitcases and they found this stuff in there and threw him in jail, and he managed to talk his way out somehow. I think the United States government intervened because he told them that, hey, you let me out of here, I'm going to start spilling of beans or whatever.
Yeah.
I don't know what a Philippine jail's like, but I don't think it's probably very nice.
Did you ever see the movie Air America?
Yeah.
You think it was very accurate or too much Hollywood?
No, there was very, very little accuracy to it. There was accuracy about shooting chichas off the roof of the Continental Hotel in Vientiane. I know that they they did that occasionally until somebody stepped on them. You know, chichas are, they're little lizards. They run around the roof, and that's about the time they took the guns away from the Air America personnel. For a long time, they were not allowed to carry sidearms. The,
Do you think the movie did the Air America people injustice?
yeah, just was loosely based on fact. I never knew any pilot was checked out on as many airplanes as Mel Gibson was. He just hopped from one airplane to the other. I mean, that just didn't happen.
What is the Plain of Jars?
Plain de Jars is a big open area up in the middle of Laos. It's called the Plain de Jars because there's a lot of funeral jars. Big jar. People in Southeast Asia, well, not so much in Vietnam. They're buried in vertical hole, but in Thailand and Laos, the body is put in a large jar in the fetal position, and that becomes their
Gravesite.
tomb. Yeah.
Okay.
And there were a lot of these on the Plain de Jars up there.
How many miles across and wide? Any idea?
Oh, boy, I couldn't tell you now. It must be. I can picture it in my mind. 20 miles or so. 20, 30
Okay.
miles.
No, it's not 100 miles then.
Huh?
It's not 100 miles.
No.
Okay, say 20 miles.
20, 30 miles, I would guess.
Okay.
I have to get out a chart to check it. What the
So why was that being protected?
well, because that comes Quam. There's a town at the east end, Quam, and that was west of 85. That was west of 36. That was, in other words, the Vietnamese and the Pathet Lao were slowly advancing from Bon Bon and Site 85 and Site 36, and working their way across Laos, and they wanted to stop them, run them out if they could. And they needed to get some support up there, and and we didn't have the capacity. America didn't have the capacity to do it. We didn't have 130s at that time, and they did push them back. But one day, and we're standing around. I'm at home, and we get a call from the company. Everybody, grab a bag, go to the airport immediately. Don't change clothes. Don't put on uniform. Don't anything. Just get out to the airport. So here we go, and we're dressed, civilian clothes, shirts, and no uniform, and some of the shirts hanging out. Put us on airplanes. Took us down to Udorn, and here they had 4 or 5 Army caribous parked. It's still in the olive drab color. And there's a guy up on a ladder on the back painting off the serial number on the tail of the airplane, painting over the U.S. Army sign, and they just left the last 3 numbers of the serial number so to give the airplane a tail number. And we got down there. We get it. The crews were divided up: pilot, co-pilot, kicker. We go to we climb in the airplane. An Army crew chief comes running up and says, "Where are you going? That's my airplane." Well, just get out of the way. We're about to leave here. And he says, "Yeah, but you don't have the logbook." "I don't need the logbook. Get away from that prop, son, because I'm about to turn it." And the Army types, they couldn't believe. Here we are. I mean, talk about a ragtag bunch. We looked like anything other than professional pilots. We looked like a bunch of bums that had been walking down Sukhumvit or Sarawak or something in the middle of Bangkok in the middle of the night. And fired up, and here went the Army's 5 caribous down to Ubon. And we started moving 105s and jeeps and trailers just as fast as we could fly them up to the planes. Now, the military could not have reacted that quickly and gotten that much stuff up there and ammunition in virtually in a matter of hours. We were hauling from the time the decision was made. It's just another example that we were doing a job that a military couldn't do because of their tables of organization.
Logistics.
Huh?
Because of logistics.
Yeah,
to
yeah,
kind of
trying
get
to fit
organized.
everything, getting permission for this, that, and the other thing, and getting everybody organized. All they had to do with us was say, grab your stuff and go, and we were there, and we were gone. It was,
Did you ever land on the Plain of Jars at all?
oh, yeah, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, there was a strip there. Oh, yeah, and we used to pick up refugees there, too. Picked up a 123. How many people do you think you can get on a 123?
Pack them in. I assume the jars are, the jars,
This is on the west end of the Plains of Jars, and these refugees have been pushed out by the PL and the Pathet Lao and the North Vietnamese, and so we had to get them out of there, and it was mayhem. We'd land, we'd put down the ramp, and the people would flood on, and what we did was we took straps, retaining straps, these kind that you canvas straps, nylon straps that you crank up, and every 3 or 4 feet across the 123, we ran those straps. We did, and the seats were just put up against the side, and these people just flooded in there. And they're not large people, you have to realize that, but they were women and kids. But we would have over 150 people in the back of that 123, and the straps were there so that when we took off, that they wouldn't all roll to the back of the airplane. People were literally throwing babies into the back of the young children into the back of the airplane, and with the idea that a friend or a relative or somebody would take care of them until the next load could get down there, because they didn't know whether they'd make it back or not.
that's because the Path of Law was after them?
Yeah, they were on the edge of the plains, and these people were trying to get out of there. And I mean, it was awful lot of people, and like I say, the kids were being thrown on the airplane, and we afraid we were going to kill somebody when we brought up the ramp in the back, because they didn't care. They were trying to get out of there.
And they were brought to where?
Where the devil did we take those people?
Back to the base?
Probably to Long Chen. Yeah, be Long Chen.
Operation headquarters.
Well, yeah, but that was where what passed for the Hmong, the Mayo ruling family
Okay.
hierarchy, where it was, and they had facilities there, and once they got there, then they could spread them out somewhere else. But they were,
Wow.
boy,